Utah supports refugees through housing, education, and jobs. They do this through counties, states, churches, and other nonprofits, all working together with shared common values. This is what makes Utah successful. I am a refugee. On April 30th, 1975, I sat in the corner of the last Navy ship about to depart Vietnam. This is the ship right here. Saigon, our capital, seemed to be in flames due to constant gunshots and bombings. As I sat in the corner, I began to see the multitude of people crowding around me. Their sweat filled the air, nauseated and suffocated me. For years, memories of mothers running with a child on one arm and their whole possessions all stuffed in a bag on the other filled my mind. I can still hear the sounds and the screams of desperate people as they push and shove their way on the single plank leading to the last ship. We eventually arrived in Guam at the refugee camps, and then to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. And on July 20th, 1975, we arrived in Massachusetts, empty-handed, except for the clothes we were wearing, given to us in Fort Chaffee. We were welcomed by the Catholic Church, including Monsignor Tinsley and the Sisters of Mercy. They were like our parents, our second parents in America. They were there to greet us and brought us to school on that very first day of school in America. And they were there for every single one of our birthdays, graduations, and weddings. Growing up, I felt very loved and connected and supported by them and by the people of Massachusetts. Our world is facing one of the worst refugee crises since World War II. We have 64 million displaced people. That's the highest since World War II. My experience of coming to the United States is nothing compared to the experiences that these people are facing now. And to make matters worse, international relief efforts are grossly underfunded, resulting in crowded conditions and horrific conditions for these people in refugee camps. When my family arrived to the United States, the support of the Catholic Church and its parishioners were vital, especially during those first few years. Catholic relief services supported us with housing, food, shelter, clothing. It was mothers from the neighborhood who would actually volunteer their time to come and help me learn English during those first years, coming in for lunch and recess. It was our American grandmother, Mrs. McGrail, who lived 5 doors down, who would actually come almost every day after school to babysit us when my parents were working. I will always remember our first Thanksgiving because neighbors came and brought this huge feast of turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, vegetables, as a way to say, welcome to the United States. So I grew up very well connected to Massachusetts, and I felt like any other kid growing up in Massachusetts. I did the Irish jig with my girlfriends on St. Paddy's Day. I get very excited when the Celtics won back then. And for my parents, I think they will always be grateful to the people of Massachusetts. It was the Kiwanis Club, the Elks Club, the Rotary Club, who all gave me scholarships so that I could attend high school. And it was our local philanthropist, Jacob Hyatt, whose parents were Holocaust survivors themselves, who awarded me a 4-year scholarship to Boston University and then eventually to Harvard Business School. My husband and I moved to Utah 4 years ago from San Francisco with our kids. Even though I've worked with refugees for most of my life, I am amazed at the bipartisan and centralized model when supported also with the LDS Church and other churches here in Utah when dealing with refugees. Utah is a state that has embraced and continues to embrace refugees. I think it comes from our pioneer heritage, when the early pioneers coming to Utah were refugees themselves, fleeing from oppression. One of the most senior members in the LDS Church, President Uchtdorf, states, "I am a refugee, having fled from East Germany to West Germany." Catholic Community Services of Utah stood up recently stating, "We will stand with refugees and immigrants." The ability to have compassion, understanding for refugees are so consistent in this state. For Utah, caring for refugees does not mean you have to be affiliated with a particular party, nor does it mean you have to be voting in a certain way. But what it does mean for all of us is to be able to stand up and choose love and compassion over fear. From 1988 to 2012, Utah has resettled roughly around 46,000 refugees. 74% are women and children, and 1,200 refugees, and we hope to continue in that number, arrive every year, mostly to Salt Lake County. As soon as refugees arrive in Utah, they are met by the IRC as well as Catholic Community Services. And these two entities really work, especially in the first year, to make sure that basic necessities are met in terms of housing, food, shelter, clothing, and access to medical care. And they also work with refugees in that first year to make sure that those refugees feel welcome and connected in their new communities. Once those needs are met, then they work with the refugees on English as a second language, education, continuing education, and exploring the workforce. Further in the first year, and going on to the second year, we also have the Department of Workforce Services under the state and the Center for New American under Salt Lake County coming in and further helping these refugees. And mostly they work specifically with education, continuing education, and making sure that all those refugees really have opportunities in the workforce of Utah. Here's a clip of what we're doing in regards to refugees here in Utah. So let's take a look.
There are 20 million refugees in the world, and less than 1% get resettlement in the United States.
The refugees that are allowed to come into the resettlement program, they are screened and interviewed, and it takes several years usually to get through that process.
Having lived through an environment where they were dodging bullets, they're now in a place where they're safe and they don't have to look over their shoulders and worry about what might happen to their families.
Helping refugees is helping humankind. It's all about humanity. What we're doing is what America is about, it's what Utah is about. It's giving people a chance to help themselves.
The fact that they think differently about some things and that their cultures are different in some ways does not mean that they don't have the same core values.
The refugees, they need friends. A lot of them do not have any family members or relatives here when they arrive. It takes the whole community to help the refugees when they come here.
Refugees come with different backgrounds, so we teach classes and do things that way. And boy, that makes a difference in kids' lives.
So much of our culture is based upon the pioneer heritage, the heritage of people that were driven from a place that they called home across the plains to settle here in the West. And as a people, we have an opportunity now to reach out and do for others what others would have done for our forefathers as they crossed the plains nearly a century and a half ago.
I was a refugee myself when I came here. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I haven't received that warm welcome when I first arrived.
As we learn to appreciate each other's cultures and values, we find there aren't so many differences after all.
So in conclusion, I would like to say that whenever I see a refugee, whether in Utah, in a taxi in London, New York, or San Francisco, I always ask, how did you escape? Did your family make it all out? Are you okay? and they would almost automatically tell me their stories. And they always end with how grateful they are to have arrived in the United States of America, especially for their kids. So I ask all of us tonight to move beyond a place of fear to a place of love and compassion. We cannot say go home to these people because there is no home to go to. And we cannot leave these people in refugee camps indefinitely. Instead, let's open our hearts and welcome these people when we see them in our everyday lives, because they want to contribute to this country and bless this country with their talents. Let us start there. Thank you.